everybody. Raul here for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the great honor and pleasure of connecting again with the incomparable Mr. Billy Sheehan. Cheers.
Very kind of you, Raul. Great to see you again.
Oh, my pleasure, man. We are touching base because there's a landmark achievement that we have to start talking about a little bit, and I know there's something that goes with it, but I want to keep people in suspense for just a moment. You are celebrating a 30-year collaboration anniversary with Yamaha Music.
Yes, sir. 30 years. 30 years is a long time. In anything, really. Yamaha is a huge international company. As you drive down the street, you see Yamaha motorcycles, you see Yamaha archery equipment and watercraft and golf stuff, and they are quite a diverse and amazing company. Being associated with them for all these years has been a real joy, an adventure, and an incredible learning experience also.
And how did this all kind of get started? How did you connect with Yamaha?
Well, I think it was about 1983, a guy named Mike Varney. Mike Varney is famous for, he had a Spotlight on New Talent column in Guitar Player magazine. And I had connected with him through friends and was talking to him on the phone, and he decided to put me in his column for my band Talus that I was in back in prior to up to 1985. That was my band. So he put a picture in there of me, and it was the first national press I ever got was being in there. It made quite a stir at the time because now there's many guitar magazines and there's all kinds of websites. So this is before the internet and when there was only one or two guitar magazines tops.
Sure.
And Guitar Player was the king of the mountain. So to be in the magazine, and I remember I'd gotten the magazine since I was a kid. I remember I saw an ad in Life magazine about a little guitar magazine sent away, and I had some of the earliest issues they ever published, and I saved them all too. I got them all stored somewhere. So Yamaha apparently saw that. And in 1984, it was Christmas '84, I was coming out to L.A. with my band Talus to do a showcase gig at the Country Club, a famous gig out in the Valley in L.A. And they said, well, while I'm there, do I want to take a drive down to Orange County and speak with them about some kind of possible endorsement deal? So I did. A friend of mine, dear friend of mine, drove me down there. I had a meeting with a guy named Doug Buttleman. Ken DePron was there. A couple of other folks that were just been Paul Meisenzahl, a couple of guys that Paul and Doug are no longer with the company. Ken sure is. He's my main go-to guy there for all these years. They were great. They said, we really like what you're doing. We'd like to see if we could build an instrument for you that would meet all your needs. And at the time, my original P bass was pretty beat. I still have it. It's hanging on the wall here, within arm's reach. Yeah. And still means a lot to me. But the body's kind of cracked, and it was everything that was done on it was hotel room repairs.
Yes.
You know, using a screwdriver as a chisel, a bottle cap as a washer, and just to keep the bass in shape, show to show on the road with no budget and a lot of blood, sweat, and beers. Yeah. So so I said yes, and so we started a relationship then in December of 1984. And then 85 came along, and I came out to L.A. to start with David Lee Roth. And then I was meeting with them regularly, beginning to have Yamaha create a bass for me. The first one was the BB 3000, the pink one, and I ended up being on the cover of Guitar Player magazine with that. Wow. It was pretty nice. I still have it. Pat Compilatano now, the master luthier at Yamaha, he has the instrument now. We're kind of refurbishing it because it's been through it's been beaten up a little bit because it went on the road with me. So we'll have that back soon. But that's basically how it started. Back in '84, they contacted me and said, do you want to work together? And I said yes.
Great. And as part of the celebration, I understand that you're releasing a new limited edition Attitude 30th bass, and you've been working closely with Pat Compilatano.
Yes.
Tell us about this instrument.
Well, I could even show it to you if you'd like to see it.
Certainly.
And it happens to be right here in my lap right now.
Wow.
Now, the original P bass, my original P bass was a sunburst bass. And all of the Attitude basses have been solid color. Mm-hmm. So we thought, would it be kind of cool to pay tribute to the bass that we used as the template for the original Attitude bass? Now, I say that because one thing is very important to me. I want to have the controls right where they are because I've been playing that old bass up to that time since I got it. It was my first real bass. So I knew that volume control was right there. I don't need to look. My finger automatically goes to it. So we actually took a copying machine, laid the bass, my old bass, down on it made a copy to make sure we got the knob in the exact right place. It's a 68 P bass, which was the original.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't now Fender is back to its glory days again. But unfortunately, at that time in the like around 1984 when I started with Yamaha, companies have their highs and lows, and unfortunately Fender was not in a good spot at that time. The instruments weren't the same quality as they are now and as they were once. So that's why I went looking elsewhere. And Yamaha quality control was second to none. So when we started on the original Attitude bass, it was meant to replace my P bass, but do everything the correct way as opposed to my way, which was just kind of hacked.
Yeah.
So they did a lot of changes that we'll go through as we converse, but that's basically the story of how this came to be.
Is it active or passive?
It's always passive.
Okay.
Reason being, and people have asked me this through the years, if I prefer passive or active. And it comes, I mean, it's kind of a foolish way of looking at it, but there's a high degree of practicality. When you're on stage and something is wrong, and the lead singer gives you a dirty look, or someone in the audience is looking at you funny, and something's wrong somewhere, way in the back of your mind is always this little voice going, is it the battery? Because it's just an uncertainty you almost always have. I put a new one in, but maybe it wasn't a good one. It might have been sitting on the shelf for years. And so there's always one little thing to nag you about. And fortunately, I've used the DiMarzio pickups since they came out. They were one of the first replacement pickup companies, and certainly one of the first with P-bass pickups. And they are loud and have high output and sound great, full range, great sounding pickups. So I never had a need. I tried a few basses with active electronics and tried it a few times, but it didn't offer me. And then again, I think once people become creatures of habit, especially on an instrument, you're used to it being a certain way. Suddenly you got extra switches and a different tone and a full range. Technically, I think active basses make sense because when you're running the pickup through a long chord, you need some help sometimes.
Yeah.
And that active electronics can really get it to the amp in much better shape than plugging the chord in. But there's a lot of tonality differences, a lot of differences in the way it feels. So I was just kind of a cross between a creature of habit and also that practicality of not having to worry about a battery when I'm in Jamestown, New York at 1 o'clock in the morning doing a gig on Sunday night.
Absolutely.
I won't be able to find the battery.
Well, and not to mention, I can't tell you how many times I've been ready to take my amp into the shop because I'm getting some weird fuzzy noises and stuff. And then I've thought to myself, I wonder how the battery's looking. And you change it in, and now it's back to good again. And so I was like, oh, man, I'm so glad I didn't take it in to get checked.
Yeah, and I come from, I'm an older guy, so I come from a generation where we did everything ourselves.
Sure.
You had to learn, I had to learn how to do fret dressing, learn how to wire my stuff, learn how to work on my amps and stuff like that. I'm not an electronics guy, but by miracles, I've managed to get things working when they weren't, especially 5 minutes to showtime. Come on, we got to go. So unless I think sometimes the more elaborate you get with your wiring and active electronics, there is just by the nature of it, more things to go wrong.
Sure.
So I try to avoid that as much as possible. Again, having said that, I've played some instruments that are beautiful, amazing active electronics, and it's really cool. It's just that I'm kind of used to the original way.
It's all a question of choice. And back to the DiMarzio, they're using the two different, you got a woofer and the wheel power split, right?
Yeah. Well, the woofer originally comes from the original bass, which was a Gibson EBO pickup. When I first got my first P bass, it had, of course, the split P bass pickup standard. It's so standard that a lot of companies that make replacement pickups, this is the first shape they do, because so many basses, even non-Fenders, have that configuration. Just like the single coil Strat is in a million instruments, the humbucker is in a million guitars. There's this kind of standard ways. So my original was an EBO because I love the sound of the P bass, iconic, probably the most recorded sound and tone of bass by percentages, it has to be in the 90-95% compared to anything else. That's just the nature of the beast. But the EBO had this neck position pickup. And when the pickup is in this position, it's super deep. It's lower, deeper sound. It gets middly here and trebly here. The closer you get to the bridge, the brighter it gets, even as you play the instrument. It gets bassier as you play it here, middle, and then treble. So that original EBO, I didn't know how to wire two pickups to a single output.
Mm-hmm.
Again, a stupid mistake. So it came with its own wiring harness with output. So I just drilled another hole in the P bass.
Uh-huh.
And I can get it and show it to you. Want me to show it?
Sure. Let's see
Pardon me, folks. Hold
the
on.
grandfather of them all.
Yes, here she is.
Oh.
So this is amazing. Now, it's all 100% natural wear. I put skateboard stickers on at one point just to prevent moisture from going into the wood anymore, because it was just beat. There's a little bit of the original sunburst finish here and there, but this is where it came from. So you see that EBO pickup right up as close. I don't even know if I got the placement right. I just got it as close to the neck as possible, and that's a super deep low end sound. So I guess if you want to apply stereo nomenclature to it, woofer, tweeter, in a way, it's kind of that case. I'm splitting my frequencies, not truly with a crossover,
sure,
but I'm favoring high end with this and favoring low end with that. So through two channels, you'd make one bassy, one trebly. Through two amps, you did the same. One amp would have most of the bass cut for clarity, and the other would have most of the treble cut. Combine the two, it works out quite efficiently with audio, because in any speaker system or speaker you see in your home stereo or your home studio, or when you go to see a PA system, they split frequencies. There's horns for the top and speakers for the bottom,
sure, making
it much more efficient. If you have less frequencies going through one speaker, it can act more efficiently. So when you split it up and make one, if a speaker has to do highs and lows at the same time, the lows are moving this fast, the highs are moving this fast, they got to do it together, and it becomes, it works, but there are anomalies and distortions amongst that. So that was the idea. So the woofer being the low frequency pickup and the tweeter being the high frequency. Now, at any given time, you can plug this in, just the regular P-bass style pickup, into an amp, and you got a P-bass.
Sure.
That's all it is to it. It's just like you'd plug in any other one. On the new Yamahas, we made it so if you want to add this pickup, but still don't want to do the double output nonsense, there's a push-pull knob, you pull it, and you've got both pickups going to one with their own separate volumes.
Nice.
Which helps a lot. A friend of mine I just got off the phone with today has one of the Yamaha basses, and he wants to wire it a little differently. So he said, "You're not going to be mad at me if I do, are you?" And I go, "No, that's good," because the essence of that bass is kind of a little bit of the spirit of the Yamaha Attitude bass with all of our users as well. Innovate with it, do your thing with it, make some changes. I would recommend hacking it apart, but you can fool with the electron like I did. Yeah, you can fool with the electronics, make some moves, and make it your own. Because as much as I'm very pleased that people are enjoying my signature bass, I'm even more pleased to see people of a broad range of styles enjoying it, from thumb slapping guys, jazz guys, hard rock guys, pop guys. So that's very, very good to see. I like to see that kind of innovation, because that's basically how the bass came about in the first place.
And I noticed that it has your signature scalloped on the fretboard.
Yes, I'll grab it again here. Way back in the 70s, I met a guy. His name was Chris Vorse, and he had his PhD in analytical philosophy. Well-educated man. He blew my mind one time. I was at his house, and I picked up a book about this thick, and I just opened it up to random and read a sentence. He goes, "That sounds like Thomas Aquinas." And it was the chapter on Thomas Aquinas. Wow. How he knew his stuff. And he was an amazing guitar player, along the lines of John McLaughlin from the Mahavishnu Orchestra. And he had done a Les Paul completely scalloped. All that was left of the fretboard was a bridge for the fret to rest on.
Wow.
And it was amazing. But the neck on a guitar has X amount of pounds to hold. A bass is different. It's a lot more, there's a lot more pressure on the neck.
Yeah,
so I always kept that in mind. And I love the idea of it, but it wasn't something I could practically do and still keep the bass strong. So in 1985, when we came out to LA, when I had that meeting with Yamaha, the next day was our first show opening for Yngwie Malmsteen on his first U.S. tour. Mm. So Yngwie and I were acquaintances before that. We became very good friends on the tour. And he had his Strats completely scalloped. And he was just amazing on the tour. Yng is the king, and he was incredible. And so I thought, I was in the hotel room with my Dremel Moto tool, and I thought, I wonder what it would be like. See, I don't want to go all the way across with the scallop because you couldn't, the idea of the scallop, just to clarify for those that don't know, it kind of gets the wood out of the way. So you can kind of really dig deep under the string and get that high bend. So on this bass, it gives me a broader range. It goes from the low E, I can drop that down to a D with the D tuner, this guy right here. Now I got a low D. I can bend that down to a low B. Wow. There, it's almost there. So I can get there. I don't have I need the strap to do that bending. And then I can also go all the way up to a high E and bend that to a G. So I got a really quite an extended range by doing that bend, doing the D tuner and the drop. So it's prevented me from having to invest in any 5 or 6 string basses generally, though I do have some attitudes strung differently. I knew that I didn't have to go across, and I didn't want to do the whole neck because I didn't want to lose that much wood, because a lot of that sustain, people are always concerned about the body for sustain. Well, the strings travel over the neck too. It's an important aspect of it. I didn't want to lose that much mass. So I just decided, well, let me just take a little bit of like halfway across. And I would 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On the 5th one, it caught and went the little spinning sanding thing. And I didn't want to ruin my frets because I was on the road and I didn't have my fret tools. Yeah. So I stopped right there. So when we did this, that was done on my old P bass. Mm-hmm. So we did this. They grandfathered all the modifications I did on this, again, done properly. Yes. So now they're nice and smooth and silky, sweet and righteous. And then the top 5 frets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if you look closely, I doubt if you can see on camera, but they're actually smaller fret wire. Reason being, I remember when I would dress my frets to make them all flat and even as wood moves on the old P bass, going from Buffalo winters to LA hot summers, hot and dry to wet and cold. Sometimes the wood will change a little bit, and you have to, a fret might get a little high, and you have to take it down to levels of the other. So I really didn't need the width of the fret because I'm not doing a lot of wear up here. And in fact, the width, when the fret sometimes flattens out, fret normally is kind of crown. When it flattens out, that string lands on it, it could land anywhere, so your intonation is a little funny. So you got to always make sure to recrown those frets with another file that's shaped like that to make sure they got a point at the top that the string touches. So I went with a smaller fret wire on the top ones, and sure enough, on the Attitude, it's smaller fret wire for the top 5 also. Be a little bit more accurate, a little more fret out of your way. If there is ever anything in your whole career you ever have to do up this high on the bass, you got the way to do it here. That's basically the idea of the scallops. Now I can bend without them if I go to a spot that doesn't have the scallops. But I do notice that my finger, it is rubbing the wood. That's why you see Eric Clapton's Telecaster, the maple neck, it's all worn away and all the finishes worn because his fingers are touching the wood. If he would have scalloped the guitar all the way through, it would be a different feel and probably a different stylistic twist for him to do that. Some guys get used to that wood underneath, so I just experimentally removed it. And it seems to work out, so I can get those high bends there. No problemo.
Nice. And it is a maple neck, and it's a bolt-on too, right?
Yes, it is. In a special way. That's one of the biggest problems I had with the P bass. God bless Leo Fender's soul for the amazing instrument that he created, but it's hard to see. But if you see where the neck joins the body, there's a lot of things hammered in into the crack there to prevent this neck from moving. Because I would I would have this on, and I would do a bend by pushing against the strap. So I hit a note and bent and get a vibrato that way, a la Pete Townsend.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw The Who with Keith Moon on drums, thinking about 74 or 5, maybe. So now the Fender has 4 screws in the back.
Yeah.
And that's how you attach a neck to a body. Fender set the standard. My only complaint is I took wood shop in high school, and when you put a screw to join 2 pieces of wood, the threaded part goes into piece A, the shank goes through the piece on top of it, piece B, and then at the top of that is a countersink hole for the head. And what you're doing is you're taking that countersink surface against the thread and pulling. The shank should move freely, but it also should be tight in that hole. Mm-hmm. The screws on the Fenders are all threaded. So when they're in the hole of the top piece, they can move. So I could take any Fender bass and push it this way, and the neck would go and move.
Oh.
And so while I was on stage, that would happen, and I had to pull it sharp. So I did everything I could do to jam. Now, again, I don't want to make this in any way a disparagement of the fine and amazing quality Fender basses, because 99.99999% of people are never going to do the crazy-ass bend that I do. It's stupid. It's not a necessity at all. And still, I can do it in many ways, and Fenders are awesome. But we wanted to make it so I would never have to worry about that neck shifting in the socket ever. Mm-hmm. So initially, this neck actually has a tongue deep within it, which goes underneath this pickup and bolts on from the inside. Then it has 3 bolts on the back.
Okay.
Then they did another thing, which is, I think, it may be patented by Yamaha, I don't know. But they decided to go in at this angle with screws, grab that neck, and pull it into the socket with these.
Wow.
Now, we even did an experiment with this, and we loosened these, and it's still fine. It holds without these perfectly well. But when you do tighten it up and the end grain of that neck hits the end grain of the socket in the body, there's a real connection. And the sustain and tonality of the bass not plugged in, which is a lot of times how I judge an instrument without an amp. Let's hear how it sounds just without any electronics at all.
Sure.
So that was an interesting innovation on their part. So it's on all these basses now, and it really holds true.
Gotcha.
So the neck to body joint was a big factor, and that was probably the main thing, the main difference between the Attitude bass and my old P bass in the early days was to really get that neck to body, because that's the most important aspect of the instrument. You got to connect this part with this part,
sure,
or you don't even have a bass. So, and again, I love Fender and I love their instruments, and they're just keep making them the way you make them. We love you, but for my particular special needs, I needed something a little bit more beefy in that connection, and Yamaha was kind enough to make it happen.
Well, it's kind of like comparing the car you drive every day and a race car. A race car driver is going to push that vehicle in ways that a normal driver won't.
Exactly.
And so, it's like we'd watch Ford and Ferrari. They had the problems with the brakes overheating because they were going so fast and having to use the brakes so much. And so, I mean, it's totally just souping it up to your needs. Now, cosmetically, I noticed all nickel hardware and a multi-layered tortoiseshell-like pick guard. Yeah,
that was how the original bass was too, the tortoiseshell. And it's an iconic material, an iconic look.
Mm-hmm.
And the original one, now I put this on myself. The production models don't have what they call the ashtray.
Yeah.
And I always kept mine on my P bass because it would prevent when my arm went across there that I would never lose any blood as a result. So I had Pat at Yamaha. I said, could you put but I didn't want to screw it into the wood. So he countersunk little brass nuts that go into the wood. So these are actually machine screws. You can screw it down on it. Because when you screw a screw into wood, it's meant to go in once. Not in and out every time you change strings. So eventually it'll start to wear out, and you got to stick toothpicks in there to make it hold again. And that's how the old P bass is. But again, it wasn't, people weren't necessarily, I don't think Leo Fender thought about changing strings every gig.
Yeah.
And now it's just a different way of playing and a different time. for me, almost every gig I got to put a new set on because the set before I was completely soaking wet, and the strings are now salted down in brine, and then they lose a lot of their zing.
Sure.
So a lot of string changing required me to take this on and off a lot. So now Pat was kind enough to put it on there. Now, and again, the production models don't come with this, but it's easy enough. You can find these on Amazon for a couple of bucks, and there you have it.
Very, very cool. And with this special release, they're only going to make 30 of this one?
Yeah. Yamaha is an amazing company, and it's huge. And for them to make a change in any product, they are bound by a lot of international trade rules for consumer safety and for a long, long list of things. For a while, they went with a black chrome finish on some of their knobs like this. And then I found out later that they went for years through all kinds of pollution, environmental, and health testing on the finish. So it's really an elaborate thing for a company that big. They have a lot of responsibility to do things correctly. For example, they purchased swaths of land in Indonesia with forests so they could environmentally harvest woods without damaging the jungle, and therefore get a permit to use that wood and then ship it all over the world. It goes deep. It's elaborate. It's elaborate. So any finish on anything has to be checked and counter-checked and balanced, and the lawyers got to look at it. So to do a quick changeover and do these instruments became quite a process. To anyone, Joe Normal would say, well, just paint it different, put a different bucket. No, they had to go through quite a bit in order to make that happen. So it was easier for them in this particular case, because of 1,000 factors, to do a small run. I was hoping they were going to make 300. My 10-year anniversary, they did 300. A wonderful bass. And unfortunately, we could only do 30 of these. And I feel bad about it because I know a lot of people write to me every day, a guy from Australia this morning, did any basses get here? I don't know. I'll try and find out, But I've already seen people post pictures of the basses they've got, and they're happy with them. But I just wish we could have done more. Maybe I told a couple people, I'm going to get a stick and poke Yamaha and trying to, come on, you guys, let's get a. So I'll be back out in the woods sharpening that stick up. Come on, you guys, try to do some more. So I'm just a little guy. So for me to be telling big Yamaha what to do is kind of tough. But they have been wonderful with me and usually always abided by my requests. So I'm doing my best to get more made, but I don't think it's going to happen in particular. But I'm just very pleased. This is the prototype. This is the first prototype. This is the one I have. I'm very happy with it. So 30 other people, hopefully they find this. I hope it serves them well. Only doing 30 so far.
And as a special thing, if I understand correctly, each one of them is going to be signed by you.
Yeah.
And it comes with an additional signed pick guard.
Yeah, they sent me about 35 pick guards in case there was a problem. And my wife and I, we set it up on the kitchen table, and I signed them all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I messed up my signature on 1, 2, so I kept one. Don't tell Yamaha though.
When they go through the count. Well, and
for 34 here.
If people want to know more about this bass, they can go to usa.yamaha.com. That's how I found it. And then you kind of go through the menu, go to the instruments, because they make so many things, and go to the basses, and it's there in all its newness. And a lucky 30 people are going to be the ones that are going to be on that. So it's certainly not something you want to dawdle. If you see one, it's like when you go to Costco. If you see it, you better get it now, because tomorrow it won't be there.
Yeah, that is true. But I have to add here that I have a great relationship with the owners of the Attitude basses. There's a Facebook page. Actually, there's 2 of them.
Wow.
For the Yamaha Attitude basses. And I'm on there answering questions. I have a couple of dear friends, a guy named John Willis, a guy named Mike Fev, a bunch of other guys, Robert Devlin, that have the bass and have experimented with it and use it for all kinds of things. And anybody that's on there has a question about anything, we answer it. If they have a problem with the bass, we get to Yamaha and try to handle it. We receive some great suggestions from everyone. So it's kind of a good family. So when you do get in the Yamaha Attitude club, and all are welcome, And even if you don't have the attitude, it's kind of good to know, because sometimes you can take an old P bass like mine and modify it and kind of make it in a similar way. That's totally cool. Or I did the ultra cheap version of the Attitude. I found some crazy website where they had P bass style necks for $50 and bodies for $30. And I took all my old parts from the 70s with a friend of mine in LA, a luthier that I knew in LA, and we put them together and made $100 Attitude basses. So it was,
wow.
And they play pretty good. If you any bass, if you set it up properly, can make it play well. But my point is that we stick by the product very much. I do personally, and with everything I endorse: Hipshot, DiMarzio, Rotosound, Hartke, Helix, all the things I endorse. I'm there for the customers, and I get questions about Helix. Keith McMillan, 12-step, is a synthesizer controller on the floor. I've answered a lot of questions for that, about the bass, about the strings, about the pickups. I just did an install video for Larry DiMarzio for his new version of DiMarzio pickups that he has that just came out. We're very, very excited about. So if you do happen to get an Attitude bass, be it the 30th anniversary or not, I'm online. I'm easy to find, and you can get in touch with me if you have any questions, anything you need to know about it. I'll be glad to help you out. I like to be available. It's a great thing about the internet age. Anybody can come to my house. Just click on it. Here we are. Welcome to my studio, Raul.
Very cool. Very cool.
So I think that's important too, because it's an expensive bass, but it is an investment. You get what you pay for, I believe, personally, and that's my opinion on it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm here to back it up, to be there if you do make the investment. Because I always say to people when I'm writing to them, if they purchase something that I've endorsed, I always say, may it serve you well, because the point of this gear is to serve us as musicians, open a few doors for us, or make doors easier to open so that we can play mm-hmm. better. Our imagination in music can be hindered less with an instrument that's easy to play, or it's righteous, or you feel good with. As I'm sure you know, when you pick up an instrument that you love, you're inspired, and more comes out of you. So in a way, it's kind of serving you in that respect. So I always say to everyone that was kind enough to purchase one of these, I really wanted to serve you well, and I'm here to help you out in any way I can.
Excellent. Well, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask as well, if people want to stay on top of all the other stuff you're doing. I know there's so much excitement with this bass. Website or social media, best place to look?
Yeah, I have my blue checkmark Facebook verified Billy Sheehan fan page, and my personal page also. You can follow my personal page, but they only allow 5,000 friends, and I maxed out on that. But on my fan page, which is that posts the same thing on everything, mm-hmm. and you can write to me the same on both. On my Instagram page, Billy Sheehan on bass, I see and read and respond to all my emails. It's a gargantuan and tireless task, but man, it's tough. But I do it. People are kind enough to drop me a line. It's the least I can do. It is just to say hello back. And there's a Twitter page for me also, which I think is verified checkmark. So yes, and then on my website, if you go click email me at billysheehan.com, that email comes right to me. Only I read it and only I answer it. Actually, I get upset sometimes. Is this really you? I go, of course it's me. Look at all the posts. Look at my cat. Here's my kitchen. Here's my cooking. Here's my workshop. Yes, it's me, and I do enjoy hearing from people on all manner of subjects. It's totally cool. But any questions anyone has about the bass or anything I'm involved with, I'm happy to respond. And if there's ever any problem or trouble, I'll get you to the right people to get it taken care of. And I enjoy doing it. I'm very lucky. After playing over 50 years, I got friends everywhere, all over the world, and I'm supremely grateful.
Well, and I know that with the diversity of topics, if I'm not mistaken, I seem to have seen some green beans in a skillet recently that you were working on.
That was last night.
Yes.
We had I cooked I used bacon grease a lot. It's got great umami, great flavor to it. A little bacon grease, a diced onion, garlic press, smush some garlic in there. Let that simmer around a little bit, then toss the green beans in. Seared them first.
Yeah.
Because I don't like mushy vegetables, but you don't want them too crisp, not raw. Then let them sit, and took 2 pecan-encrusted pork chops, got them in the oven, got them out. My wife and I had a beautiful dinner together, lit our little our portable fire pit on our deck outside, and had just a great evening under a beautiful Nashville autumn evening of cool air as fresh as can be. And I do a lot of cooking. I post about it, and I probably get more comments about that than anything else. So I think it's hilarious.
Well, Billy, thank you so much for taking time to share it. Congratulations again on this landmark 30th anniversary. Folks, you've gotten all the details on the Attitude 30th bass. Don't hesitate. If you want one of these, make your move. You've seen him here on Bass Musician Magazine, the incomparable Billy Sheehan.
Very kind of you, Raul. Good to see you again. To all your listeners and watchers, I want to wish you all the best. Everyone stay healthy. Hopefully we'll get through all this soon, and there'll be live music again as soon as possible. I can't wait to see all my friends around the world again. So thank you for this opportunity, Raul, to talk about my beautiful relationship with Yamaha and the wonderful basses they've made for me. I appreciate it very much.
My pleasure.